Okay. We can get started then. Good afternoon. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of June 24th, 2020. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Josh Whitehead serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Whitehead, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Doss?
Present.
Ms. Baker?
Here.
Mr. Claybrook?
Here.
Mr. Molazary? I didn't see his number. Vice Chair Savage Towns?
I'm here.
Ms. Scurlock?
Present.
Mr. Jackson?
Present.
And Mr. Chairman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I would like to swear in the staff. I trust that you're all seated with your hand raised. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing, the whole truth and nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
I do.
That sounds good. Thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meetings, as I think the secretary sent out an amendment to the first ones that we were done with, just fixing a few things.
So moved. Jackson?
Second.
Second.
Being moved and seconded, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report, if there is one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And one cleanup piece of business, going back to the roll, Mr. Molazary, are you here?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll briefly explain the procedure. First of all, we have achieved our desired results of 100 subscribers on YouTube. So if we continue, and as long as we continue this format of electronic meeting style, we will now be able to include the following URL or website address for our meetings, and that is YouTube/C, C standing for channel, / Division of Planning and Development. And for all those listening, we will be streaming live on that channel the PowerPoint presentations for the cases that will be presented to the body this afternoon. And one note, this goes back to the source of discussion both by this body and bodies like it from Memphis to Bristol and all points in between. It is expected that Governor Lee will not extend his telephonic open meetings exemption. However, we will fall back to a section of the Tennessee Code annotated that allows for testimony to be done via phone call, but the body itself, a quorum of which at least, must be present. So I'll be polling this body in the weeks to come to make sure that the regularly scheduled time is good for at least 5 members. If not, we'll have to either move around our date before we send notice or come up with another alternative. With that, last month, Mr. Chairman, the board member Jackson, with the body's approval, requested information on 2 past cases, and I wanted to give the board an update on those. The first was actually a case that went to the Land Use Control Board. That was the Lowe's Hotel across the street from where I'm sitting at the corner of Main and Adams. There was a discussion item placed on that case regarding an homage or a memorial to the historical importance that plaza has on the civil rights movement, not just here in Memphis, but nationwide. The architect has reported back to us that they have not gotten to that level of design, but they still very much intend to do that. And number two, on our landfills, our Crestview Landfills, one of which the applicant was Scott Pierce, the other was Keith Farrell. We had inspector go to the site. He found that there was no activity on the site, and on the western half of the combined property, we have had a application filed with this body pursuant to its approval or its conditional approval last year. For the other half, if we don't get an application submitted, even if there's no activity, we probably will at some point get in touch with TDEC because obviously they have more abilities to bring someone into compliance than the zoning inspectors and process do. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will go back to my regular script on the order of business this afternoon. Let me get to the right page. The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies are found on the county's website, on the Board of Adjustments homepage, and also on the YouTube link for this meeting. For each of our cases, Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development will give a presentation including site plans, photographs, and maps of the property. At the conclusion of the presentation, the applicant will present his or her case. After that presentation, the board will first hear from those speakers in support of the application, followed by those speakers in opposition of the application. All parties providing testimony will be sworn in by the chairman. Pursuant to the rules of procedure, each side, the applicant and his or her supporters, will have 10 minutes, and the opposition will have 10 minutes, followed by a rebuttal period by the applicant for 2 minutes. Those times may be extended by the chairman, provided he gives both sides an equal amount of additional time. If after the conclusion of the public hearing and a motion is made and additional testimony is sought by a board member, a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules will be required, and at which point we'll hear both sides for an equal amount of time. All motions by the board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the actions of this body require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application, regardless of those board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not exceeding 90 days with the consent of the applicant or 30 days without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and the Shelby County Board of Commissioners in 2010 and became effective on January 1, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC to make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of the individual sections. This body is vested with the power to act on the cases before it under the provisions of Chapter 922 of that code. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all other notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC, and by my count, that did involve the mailing of 571 notices earlier this month.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. One point of business before we establish our consent agenda. It's come to my attention that this is our last meeting that we're going to have with Ms. Smith. And so I wanted to thank her for her service that she did with OPD. She's been an excellent asset here, and I'm sure she'll be an asset where she goes. I believe she's going to San Mateo, California. So just wanted to congratulate her on the new job and wish her well.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. At this point, the board will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the Secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole, will not hold individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which cases this week are eligible to be placed on consent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go through these in order as they appear on the calendar. Again, the following cases are eligible for the consent, and the way that works is we have received no opposition from the recipients of those mailed notices, nor anyone else, nor have we had a request by the applicants to amend the conditions on the following cases. So these would be ready to go unless a single board member would wish to hear a hearing on it. That begins with agenda item number 1, which is docket BOA 2042. That's on the west side of New Allen between Ridgemont and Egypt Central. The applicant is Vanderbilt Park Developers, represented by Wayne Stokeling. The use district is the R8 and R8 floodplain zoning districts, and the request is a variance from paragraph 977I5 to allow for the completion of an already constructed subdivision, but after 2 years of the subdivision's approval. Agenda item number 2, Mr. Chairman, I'll call it out, but to spoiler alert, the applicant has requested, and at least one of the representatives of the opposition is amenable to hold this case for a period of 1 month. So if approved, on the consent calendar, it would be as a 30-day or 1 month hold rather than an approval. And that is docket BOA 2043, located at 2471 Broad. That's at the southeast corner of Broad and Hollywood. The applicant is Reconnect Memphis, LLC, represented by Jason Jackson. The use districts are the CMU1 and R6H zoning districts. The request is a variance from subsection 310.2b to allow reduced setbacks, as well as a use variance from 252 to allow a convenience store in a residential district. Again, that would be as a 1 month hold. Agenda item number 3, which is docket BOA 2045. The location is the west side of Epping Way, south of Northcliffe. The applicant is Destiny Development Corp., represented by Chauncey Gray and Tim McCaskill. The use district is the multifamily RU2 district, and the request is a variance from paragraph 977I5 to allow, again, the completion of a subdivision after the 2-year mark of its approval. Agenda item number 4, that's docket BOA 2046, located at 500 South Goodlet. The applicant is City LLC, represented by Bart Thomas. The use district is the R10 single-family district. The request is a variance pursuant to subsection 329F to allow an encroachment into a platted side yard setback. Agenda item number 5, which is docket BOA 2047, located at 2673 Yale. Mr. Chairman, let me skip this for a minute. We had a request for opposition. They are not with us yet, but what I'd like to do is keep this off the consent calendar to give that opposer as much time as possible, and if we find that there's still no opposition by either that person or any board member, we'll address that at the very end. Okay, agenda item number 6, docket BOA 2049, located at 748 Lane. The applicant is Habitat for Humanity of Greater Memphis, represented by Cindy Reeves. The use district is the Moderate Density Residential, MDR, zoning district within the Uptown Special Purpose District. The requests are variances from 735C1A and 735-1B to allow the front and side yard setbacks to exceed the maximums provided in those subsections. Agenda item number 7 is docket BOA 2050, located at 223-225 Buena Vista. The applicant is Councilman Dr. Jeffrey Warren and Catherine C. Warren. The use district is the R6 Historic District. The request is from subsection 392E to allow a front yard setback of 20 feet rather than 30 feet. The next item is agenda item 8, docket BOA 2051, located at 2432 Summer Avenue. The applicant is Townsend Development, LLC, represented by Scott Blake. The use districts are CMU3 and RU1, commercial, respectively, and multifamily residential district. And the request is a use variance from 252 of the UDC to allow the continued use of a commercial structure.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Whitehead,
Yes.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but I'd like to pull that item off for discussion, please.
Okay. That brings us to number 9, agenda number 9, docket number BOA 2052, located on Ward Road, north of Garnett and south of Russell Bond. The applicant is Kimberly Lightfoot. The use district is the CA Agricultural District. The requests are a use variance from 252 to allow a farmer's market and from 331B to allow a lot without frontage. And I think the final matter for that's eligible for consent is agenda item number 10, which is docket BOA 2053, located at 4642 Quince. That's at the northwest corner of Quince and Perkins. The applicant is McDonald's USA, represented by Margaret Grissom. The use district is the CMU1 district, and the requests are a site plan modification to docket BOA 9840, as well as a variance from 468A1 to allow a portion of a drive-through lane to be located between the principal structure and the street. So I guess in summary, Mr. Chairman, all but items 5, 8, and 11 are on consent, with the caveat that 2 is as a 1 month hold.
Okay, very good. In that case, I would want to get a motion from the board to approve agenda items number 1, 2 is a 30-day hold, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, and 10 on our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, perfect. Being moved and seconded, I want to remind the board by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Ms. Scarlock?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I find that the standards of 9.22.6 of the UDC are met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
8 ayes.
Okay, perfect. So if you are on the call with us for any of those agenda items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, or 10, you have either been approved or held. So you can hang out with us and listen to the rest, but you are no longer needed here. Mr. Secretary, will you now call the first case to be set on our agenda?
Mr. Penzis, do we have, let me get the name right here. Do we have Mr. Mosley on the line? Yes, we do. Okay. Mr. Chairman, item number 5 is docket BOA 2047. That's located at 2673 Yale Avenue. The applicant is Ave Maria Home, represented by Marty Regan and Tim McCaskill. The use district is the EMP Employment Light Industrial District, and the requests are a use variance from 252 to allow a nursing home and from 272 F2B for a modified streetscape plate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I assume that since we're on this call, we've had both applicant and the opposition here. So, Ms. Smith, would you give us a staff report of this case?
Thank you. Thank you. Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development. This case is a use variance to permit a nursing home in a light industrial zone in Binghamton, and a variance from the streetscape plate along parking lot. The existing lot is much smaller than the surrounding light industrial parcels. However, it utilizes much more parking than its surrounding neighbors. Staff has determined that this lot would be better suited for a non-industrial use, since it would not be practical for most industrial companies to utilize a lot of that size or parking for so many vehicles. On page 15, you'll see staff analysis of consistency with Memphis 3.0 general plan, and staff has found that the requested use of a nursing home is consistent. On pages 15 and 16, you'll find the conclusions. Staff believes that the requested use of a nursing home in this area would help improve the neighborhood as nearby housing increases and the industrial uses decrease. Staff feels that the streetscape required for nursing homes with front parking lots is not suitable for this lot, and that the required landscape buffer will screen the parking lot without taking away too many sight lines from Yale Avenue. The recommendation can also be found on page 16, and staff recommends approval with conditions for this case. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions for Ms. Smith or other staff members at this time? All right, very good. Then we can hear from the applicant. Is it Mr. McCaskill that's on the line with us?
Yes, Tim McCaskill, 7891 Stage Hills Boulevard.
Okay, Mr.
Smith, I want
McCaskill, do
point
you
out
swear to tell the...
Mr. Regan is also on the line with us, representing the applicant.
Perfect. Okay. And Mr. Regan's acting as an attorney, so I will just swear in Mr. McCaskill. So, Mr. McCaskill, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. And then between you and Mr. Regan, do you know who would like to speak first?
I'll let Tim speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Regan. All right, Mr. McCaskill, and I'm setting my timer right now for 10 minutes.
Okay, well, it won't take that long. We're in agreement with the recommendation and the presentation that Ms. Smith made, and we'll just hold our time for rebuttal.
Okay, very good. You have held 9 minutes and 46 seconds. So, are there any questions of the applicant at this time? All right, hearing none, then we're going to move on to the and Mr. Secretary, there's no one else for the applicant, correct? That's on the line with us.
That is correct. Just Mr. McCaskill and Mr. Regan.
Very good. And then is it just Mr. Mosley that's here in opposition?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, Mr. Mosley, are you with us?
Hey, am I no longer muted?
You're here now, yeah. Hey,
Okay, thank
if
you for
could,
your
Mr.
time.
Mosley. Absolutely. You give your name and address for the record for us?
Sure. My name is Jonathan Mosley, and my address is 2593 Hale Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, zip code 38112.
Okay, very good. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We have 10 minutes for opposition, so share with us what you'd like to on this case.
I'll keep it very brief. I'm just a concerned citizen that lives in the Binghamton community. Like I said, I live on Hale Avenue, and I've received the notices of the nursing home project and just kind of wanted to reach out to say that I oppose the project. I believe personally that the community can't handle more traffic like this through our inner streets, and this type of business and traffic is not really conducive to a safe and sustainable community like the one that we have currently.
Okay. Is that, are there any other thoughts, or is that it?
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and there's not a problem with that being it. I just didn't want to. You said very brief, and that was very brief. So, are there any questions for Mr. Mosley at this point? All right, hearing none, we're going to move back to the applicant for any rebuttal they may have. We have 11 minutes and 46 seconds. But Mr. McCaskill, would you like to start speaking to traffic?
I would. Currently, this site is the corporate headquarters for Power and Telephone Supply Company. They have a manufacturing operation there, as well as they use this building for their corporate headquarters, their offices. The nursing home use will generate much less traffic than the current manufacturing, distribution, and office space. So I think traffic will be much lighter once it converts from the industrial use to the nursing home use than it is now.
Okay. How many beds are there going to be in this nursing home, sir?
60.
60. Okay.
And this is
I have a question.
They currently have.
All right, Ms. Doss?
Yes. Can we revisit, I don't know if we said that and I missed it, but how many parking spaces will there be? How much parking is needed for this space on a daily basis?
Okay, Mr. McCaskill?
There's actually much more parking spaces currently on the site than will be needed for the nursing home.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a number of estimated number between the staff and visitors of parking? To give us a rough sense of what.
If I could defer that question to Mr. Regan,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
All right, Mr. Regan?
I'll answer that. Currently, there are 80 plus places available for people coming and going into the industrial part. As far as the nursing home, one of the benefits of this site is many of our staff make use of public transportation. So as much as we will have employees coming and going, hopefully one of the benefits of this is that public transportation will be used as opposed to automobiles. But with the 60 residents, it's almost assured that the residents themselves will not have cars. They'll have visitors. Regrettably, people think they visit elderly at the nursing home. I've seen from experience it doesn't happen with the frequency that you would hope would happen for the elderly. And so as far as cars, I would suspect that we would have no more than 60 and not the normal 80 cars that are there right now. And I also think it would be very light traffic without industrial trucks and the type things available for this current usage. And so with light industrial, you've got the opportunity of trucks coming and going. Here, I think you're going to see staff coming and going both by public transportation as well as an individual car, and you'll see visitors coming to the 60 people that are residing there without the residents themselves having cars, and that's probably going to be very light.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, could I double back and ask a question of the opposition? Question.
Hold on. I think to rehear from the opposition, we need a vote from the board. Is that correct, Mr. Secretary?
No, sir, because we haven't gone to a deliberation section yet, so we can still.
Okay.
We're still open.
My mistake. All right, Ms. Doss, if you would like to do that, you can.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know what our board does most of the time is try to find a compromise so that not everybody will be happy, of course, but to make sure that we find some sort of somewhat comfortable middle ground between the neighbors and the developers. So I hear from you that traffic is a concern. So I'd like to hear more about why you feel it would be a concern and what would make it comfortable for you. How do we meet in the middle?
Thank you again for the time. And I'd like to first off say I've actually talked to my neighbors, so this is not just my singular voice. I've met with Miss Ellen across the street, Mr. Leroy across the street, and several of other neighbors in the community to talk about this. And a lot of them were saying that they couldn't get access to this line because they're elderly or whatever the case may be. So I definitely hear the heart of the project at hand, but right now the community is growing as it is, with more people moving in daily, and there's already construction happening. And from the construction that they have coming in there seems to be more street racing. I know this is not the place to bring this issue up, but there seems to be more street racing. If anything, I believe we need more speed bumps. We need more ways to mitigate the traffic and slow it down. And I think creating another tunnel or another outlet for people that are rushing to get to work, people that are trying to go and visit somebody, they will be racing through our neighborhood to get to another place. And I think really what we need now is to kind of slow down traffic. And I don't know, like I said, this may not be the place for that, whether it's stop signs or speed bumps, but we feel like this is just another project with the amount of parking spots. You have around the clock shifts. That's 3 shifts that we need to take care of those people, as well as supply and deliveries. I've actually worked at a nursing home, so I completely understand how it works and how important it is, but I don't think this is the neighborhood for it. Thank you.
So I do think those concerns are valid, though. I mean, adding stop signs, speed bumps, that's not our job, of course, but I think that is actually valid and probably a thread you and the neighbor should pull should this project move forward. And I also wanted to ask, do you feel like it would be more or less traffic than the current use or previous use?
I think it'll be more traffic.
And follow-up to that follow-up, it sounds to me like the traffic will be, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, certainly not trying to beat you up, but it sounds to me like the traffic will be sporadic. Like there will not be, it will be maybe a consistently sporadic, if that makes sense, flow of traffic throughout the day, but not any one rush of traffic. That's not really a question, but I just wanted to get your feeling on that.
No, I completely understand, and I think that is the issue. We've kind of, like was stated earlier, there is kind of MLGW and other buildings nearby, and there is a service hour that they kind of run through. I don't see a bus running down there, so I don't think there's public transportation that runs down Collins near that area or just through the neighborhood that creates that. But that one industry would create that traffic that we're talking about, and it would be sporadic, like you're saying. It wouldn't be something that can be watched or monitored, but just between the days, mixing that in with what we currently already have would be the issue. So not necessarily that it brings a problem in itself. It just adds to a current problem that the community is already facing.
And is Yale a one-way? I know some of the streets in Binghamton are one. Is that a one-way?
Yale is not a one-way.
It's not? Okay. And so the primary access, you come from Collins to from Sam Cooper?
Yes, it's in between Sam Cooper and Poplar. And so a lot of the traffic that we're talking about is people coming from Sam Cooper to get to Poplar or going from Poplar to get to Sam Cooper, and they run through the neighborhood for that. So they're not necessarily coming into the neighborhood. That's not the traffic. The traffic is, I'm about to pop on Collins, or I'm about to go through North Bingham to skip lights and just get to the other busy street on the other end.
Yeah, I've done it. I will admit to having done that. My daughter's ballet company is on Broad Avenue, and they're moving actually right by you guys.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are.
Collage, yeah. So I'm just trying to get a visual of what that looks like and perhaps maybe lead us to a compromise, because it is always challenging when the neighborhood starts when there's rapid development. you want to respect the neighbors and also facilitate, growth and using this lightly and, for lack of a better phrase, an improvement. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm just going to sit with it now. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you both.
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. I just have a quick question, just going along the line of the in and out traffic. If there are emergency vehicles that have to come in and out, is there a specific area, and I'm trying to look at the site plan, to address that flow of traffic? Because we're talking about a nursing home, so I'm sure that's in the plan, but I just don't see it on the site plan.
Mr. McCaskill, can you help with that, maybe?
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what the question was. Is there a way to accommodate
the facility for emergency vehicles? The way the parking set up, would there be ease of access for emergency vehicles to and from, on the site plan? I guess a specified, no parking zone except for that, loading, unloading type stuff.
Yes, it would be. The entrance to the site is just on the west side of the building where there's a handicap access, and any of that area where you see parking spaces now next to the building on the west side, that could be loading and unloading in that area. And I would like to point out that this is a dead end street. It's only about 400 feet long, so it's not like you've got traffic coming through this street going to somewhere else.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So just saying.
Are there any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the opposition.
I'm not sure who just said something.
This is JT. I have a question for the opposition.
Please, sir.
My only question is, are you aware, or has the community requested a speed hump from the city, the neighborhood yet?
I'm not aware. I have not personally, but I'm not aware if there have been any previous requests.
Okay. Is the planning staff aware of that program? From my understanding is that you can request a speed hump city of Memphis, especially if it's like a neighborhood or an association, and maybe that might be the avenue to try to help slow down traffic in the neighborhood.
Actually, can I jump in really quick, JT? Because there was a whole post dedicated. I try to minimize next door, for obvious reasons. However, there was a whole post dedicated to speed bumps on there, so I was tracking that. So you might be able to look on Nextdoor. I mean, they can obviously provide you insight here, but you can also look on Nextdoor to track that post because in their progress and their process on Nextdoor, because I was tracking it as well.
Okay. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Go ahead. Is it JT still?
On Yale, it is a dead end street, and so it seems like the traffic would not, besides Collins.
At least not in front of this building.
Yeah. We do hear
other questions. All right, then Mr. McCaskill, or Mr. Regan, did y'all have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is that if you look at the plan, whether it's page 4 or 5, as Mr. McCaskill indicated, Yale dead end. And so the only traffic that would be coming down Yale would be accessing our parking lot or the property across the street on Yale. But there's definitely a dead end where that's not a thoroughfare. It seems to me, and I'm very, very familiar with the neighborhood, immediately to our south is a City of Memphis lot that looks 3 to 4 times the size of our property that we're seeking, that is really just a city sand and gravel lot without any traffic there. So between all of that property and our property, I think the travel would be minimum. As far as bus routes, one of the benefits of this is that at the corner of Poplar and Collins Street is a bus connection for the employees. But I think what I'm hearing is that people unrelated to what we propose and unrelated to Power and Tel and unrelated to Faith Temple Church and unrelated to people coming on to this street are really going through Collins Street between Poplar and Sam Cooper, as opposed to using a parkway or taking any route. There are railroad tracks and other impediments. And so if you're trying to cross between Sam Cooper and Poplar, Collins Street is a natural thoroughfare to those. The next street is Scott Street to the east. And so I would suggest the problem is Collins Street is a thoroughfare between Sam Cooper and Poplar, and obviously we would be supportive of speed breaks or anything to slow down traffic on Collins Street.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Mr. Regan?
No, that's all.
Okay, very good. Are there any further questions before we move into discussion? All right, hearing none, I want to see if there's anyone on the board that would move to approve BOA 20-47 as conditioned by staff.
John Jackson, so moved.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
All right, I got a second. Is there further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll say that it seems to me, I understand the traffic concerns. I think I agree with Mr. Regan. Most of the traffic concerns come from probably people outside of the neighborhood using this street, as a thoroughfare when it's, not nearly as wide as, going down to Tillman or Hollywood and stuff and those streets. Hopefully we can, call the traffic department, call the police department for speeding. Maybe they can do, we don't really control that. I don't know if a speed hump can go on there or not. I know they can, you can't just put a speed hump on Union, but it's available for other places, but seems like that would be it. I don't think that this particular use is really going to affect the traffic other than the fact, if you close the business completely down, of course, there'd be less traffic. But I don't think this one is going to pose much of a threat. That's my thought. Any other thoughts?
I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chairman. John Jackson.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I do agree. Portia Scott.
All right, with that, I assume you're ready to vote. Mr. Whitehead, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I find that the standards of 9.22.6 of the UDC are being met and would not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
8 ayes.
All right, with that, the case is approved. Thank you both applicant and opposition for meeting with us today and spending some time on this case. Mr. Secretary, will you call our next case to hear today?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to agenda item number 8, which is docket BOA 2051, located at 2432 Summer Avenue. The applicant is Townsend Development, LLC, represented by Scott Blake. The use districts are the CMU3 and the RU1 districts, and the request is a use variance to allow the continued use of a commercial structure.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith, if you want to give us just a real brief staff report, and then we'll jump into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development. As Mr. Whitehead stated, this case is a use variance for the historic Lucian Theater on Summer Avenue to continue as a commercial structure. The Lucian Theater has been standing for roughly 100 years and has been multiple commercial uses since it was built. The most recent zoning lines show the front half of the parcel to be CMU3, while the back half of the parcel to be RU1. A small, and on the same note, the building is so small that it would not be ideal for residential uses, and many commercial uses also would not be allowed in that portion of the structure. The applicant has not decided on a new use for the structure, but has expressed it to align with the CMU3 permitted uses. With that being said, staff is recommending approval with conditions. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Is there any questions of staff at this point? All right, hearing none, is the applicant with us?
Why am I on mute?
Hi, this is...
Okay, yes, Mr. Blake and Mr. Townsend are here.
Okay, great. Mr. Blake and Mr. Townsend, could you both, I guess Mr. Blake first and Mr. Townsend, give your full name and address for the record, and then I'll swear y'all both in.
Scott Blake, 671 Jefferson, Memphis, Tennessee, 38105, Design 500.
Okay, thank you.
William Townsend, 651 South Belvedere, Memphis, Tennessee, 38102.
Okay,
I'm sorry, 38104. 38104.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do, Scott Blake.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Would one of you like to add anything to what Ms. Smith spoke about with this case?
Scott, you go first, and then I'll chime in.
Okay, no, I think thank you for doing such a wonderful job on that. We have read and acknowledged all the conditions and accept them. Bill?
Yes, all the conditions look great, and as stated before, I'm not sure the exact final use of the building. I would like it to continue as the CU3 designation to give me the most flexibility to continue the kinds of things that had been occurring in that part of the neighborhood without going to any of the X-rated stuff, so to speak.
Right. Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, John Jackson.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Sir. Gentlemen, I just have one question. You said a use has not been decided on for the property yet. Do you have any pending or contingent interest in the project rezoning, based on its rezoning, or this board approving the particular aspects that you're requesting?
Well, let me jump in. So this is Bill Townsend, and so just so everybody knows, I grew up in Memphis, have moved away, but are now coming back. So I have a tremendous interest in old buildings because every house I lived in kept getting torn down. I went to Rhodes College. That building has been a problem for roads in the community for a long time. So I bought it with the intention of doing something that would make the overall neighborhood better. Okay, just so everyone understands that. The specifics are pre-pandemic. I was looking at saying with a question mark, possibly making an event center. So similar to what had been in the past, if you think of a theater venue as an event center, they used to have seats for 1,400 people. The city does not need a 1,400-person theater anymore in that location. So I was looking at possibly making it, some kind of, wedding, birthday party, itinerant concert place. I'm not quite sure. A lot of that has to do with zoning and specifics of, what the best and highest use is for everybody in Memphis. Really is how I'm looking at it. For the short term, I may end up opening up some kind of antique store, design store in the front. There were 2 retail spaces in the theater. It's difficult to tell. We think that originally they were both just used for the theater, and then when the theater became a bowling alley in '58, there was a barber shop on one side and possibly a retail store on the other side. We're doing a lot of this through oral history and memories of people in the neighborhood and photos that we can find. So short term, it may become some kind of retail space. Longer term, assuming that we as a country get the pandemic under control, I'd still like to evaluate making it some kind of event space. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the applicant? Hearing none. And Mr. Secretary, was there any opposition on the line with us on this case?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mary Baker.
Sure. Go ahead, Mary.
For discussion. So.
Okay. Do you want to add your thoughts now?
Yes, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I love this old theater building now, and I've been praying that someone would do something to save it before it's too late. I don't know Mr. Townsend. I do know Scott Blake, and wow, I'm so glad to see that he's associated with it, because I know Scott will want to do the right thing. But I cannot support this application as it is before us today. And the biggest problem with it, Mr. Jackson really hit the nail on the head with his question. There's nothing in the application or in the staff report that tells us what use we're approving. It's a use variation without a use. It suggests that any use in the CMU3 district is being allowed. And that use, I guess, could be changed over time after this is approved without any further approval. And I think, Mr. Whitehead, you'll agree that that's like rezoning the property. And we just don't have that authority, and we don't have the ability to limit it in any way. And this CMU3 district, it is the most intensive commercial district in our zoning ordinance. If this application is approved, as it seems to be set up in this staff report, any of the most intensive uses allowed in CMU3 would be allowed in the theater and on the parking lot that faces Faxon. And there are homes, single family, right across Faxon from this property. I was so concerned about this, I decided to go look at it today. And, what I found was that there's a renaissance going on in that neighborhood. You can see signs of it. One of the houses right across from this property is just beautifully renovated. And more houses are being renovated. And here's some of the uses, just so you'll kind of get what I'm saying, I hope, that could be permitted if this is approved. Vehicle service, car wash, convenience store with gas pumps, restaurant with alcohol sales. I'm not sure about nightclub. Mr. Whitehead, you could probably tell us. Vehicle sales is a special use permit, but does that mean a special use permit could be approved because of this variance? It wouldn't be zoned CMU3, but it would be a variance. It's hard to tell the difference. What I believe that this application just needs more work before it's approved. And I hope that board members would be willing to give this a little more time for the staff and the applicant to work on it. I personally think the best solution is to convert it to a planned development so that the uses can be specifically permitted and limited, and other conditions can be added to protect the neighborhood. If you're not willing to hold it, and I hope you do, and I hope, Scott and Mr. Townsend, that you might just agree to hold it now that you hear these concerns. If not, I propose a condition that demolition of the theater revokes the variance. I also propose a condition that the Faxon portion of the property is only approved for accessory parking to the theater. and any other use of that parking lot revokes the variance. I also recommend a landscaping and screening plan for that parking lot, which, as I said earlier, is right across from homes, and they're nice homes, and a lot of them are being renovated. But what I strongly feel that we should not approve a use variance where we don't know the use. And I'll say one more thing. I know I've gone on a long time, and I'm sorry, but this is going to be there for a very long time. And we recently, Lamar Avenue was comprehensively rezoned by Office of Planning and Development, and the CMU3 zoning. In almost every case, they were able to downzone it to CMU1. And so now it's much more compatible with the neighborhoods that are along there. But if this gets approved as a variance, it's not zoning anymore. It's like a contract. And no matter how we tried to comprehensively rezone, we couldn't touch it. So that's another reason. And, I saw, when I looked on the county's maps today, I saw Board of Adjustment approvals on there that went back to 1959. So that just gives you an idea of how long this approval would be on the books, and there wouldn't be any way that anyone could ever do anything about it. And Mr. Blake and Mr. Townsend, would be long out of the picture, but this would still be there. And so that's it. And all I'm asking for, really, not a rejection right now, but just a hold so that we know what we're approving. That's it. And I appreciate you listening to me.
This is Scott Blake. Mr. Chairman, could I make a point of procedure, please?
Yes.
As Mary said, she and I have been colleagues for many years, and we hold each other in high respect. But as I was reading the letter that came from MidtownMemphis.org, pointing out the same points that Mary makes, I noticed that she is listed as number one as a director on the board of that nonprofit. I mean, it seems to me that there is a conflict of interest with having her on this board, one, pulling the consent agenda and then speaking to the points.
Can I respond to that? I am on
sure.
the board. I am on the board, but I do not engage in any of the discussions on matters relating to Board of Adjustment items. In fact, when we have a meeting that involves Board of Adjustment items, I leave the room. And Scott, if you don't believe that, you can ask Andy and anybody else that's on the board. There's not a conflict of interest because I have carefully made sure that there's not.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Townsend. May I jump in with a couple of comments?
Yes,
Ms. Baker, thank you so much for everything you've said. Let me just clarify one thing here, okay, and this is very important, short-term and long-term, okay? I bought a building in order to save it for the city of Memphis, and that's what my plan is. Now, I'm hoping 100 years from now, well, some of you younger people may be alive, but I certainly probably not going to be around. I want that building to be here in Memphis and be something that everyone can be proud of, okay? The zoning issues, Ms. Baker, as you know, these go back to the Ciancomo family. They used to own the entire block there, possibly more, I'm not sure, but they never set up the zoning correctly in the first place. So the CU3 zoning has been in place, okay, for the front two-thirds of the theater, and the back third actually was, we think, originally part of the backyard of the lot behind, which was zoned RU1. So as the Ciancomo family built different structures there and edifices, they never went back and fixed the zoning. So the easy thing, and Scott Blake and I talked about this, was to do nothing and just move forward with trying to do something on the building that was zoned CU3, and with the attached parking lot, which was zoned RU1, and just move forward. Okay, so we're trying to fix something that has been incorrect for over 75 years. So we're not so much asking for any kind of variance. We're just trying to fix what the city's been operating with. As a major traffic corridor, Summer Parkway, Crestview Parkway, that intersection there gets a lot of traffic. It's not a local neighborhood type of structure or street. The expectation, I think, by the city is that as more density is planned and built, especially like the apartments on Broad, the various apartments on Broad, that there'll be more people going through these neighborhoods. Okay? I do respect the fact that people would not want, a used car lot or a gas station built on the back parking lot. I totally understand that. I understand that neighborhood quite well. The one house that's renovated across the parking lot, the owner and I were speaking recently. She's fantastic. The house across the street from her that's currently being renovated, I bought so I can renovate it and hopefully sell it to a renter on the street who lives there currently, because I want to rehab that neighborhood for the current and future residents. There are a couple of conflicts with the MemphisMidtown.org that Mr. Blake was referencing. So one, I'm not quite sure their purview because this neighborhood that this theater is located in is not in Midtown. It's not in Binghamton. It's not in Hyde Park. It's not in Grahamwood. When you look at the neighborhood maps, it seems to exist in its own little pocket. And I've actually talked to the Summer Avenue Merchants Association about trying to come up with a neighborhood name and sort of brand it for the city, as something to go forward to help bring in more businesses and more traffic, and make it what it used to be a long time ago, which was just a very safe retail corridor. Specifically, the letter that was written in opposition, Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to say all this, so procedurally I don't say it correctly. Please, my apologies. That letter was not approved by the board of MidtownMemphis.org, so I believe it was written by Miss Emily Couples, but their board did not approve that letter. So I'm not sure where that stands in terms of their standing to issue a letter that was not approved. So that's more informational for all of you. Thank you.
And may I have one more moment to speak?
Yes, Mr. Blake.
Okay. I also wanted to add that we are in the preliminary stages of placing this building on the National Register of Historic Places, contacting first the Tennessee Historic Society. So we're very close to making the application for Part 1 for the listing on the National Register. So it's very important for us to keep it historically correct as well.
Let me ask y'all this: Would you have a problem with the additional conditions that Ms. Baker mentioned about? I know you're trying to preserve the building, so it seems to make sense we could tie this to that building being there, and the parking lot. I think y'all need that as a parking lot right now. Would those be too onerous to have those restrictions? Basically, if that ever changed, you just have to come back and get a variance.
So on the building destruction, tear down, whatever, I don't know what the exact right word is, demolition, sure. No problem at all. I actually like that. Right. I mean, that actually is something,
that helps
30 years
from
now. Yeah, I think that's what I want. I mean, I want the building preserved. So I think that's great. The only issue I have so let me ask you a question on the parking lot, and I'm talking theoretically. So let's say, I'm trying to think. Let's say I decide to make it an art school, okay? And I had 10 parking spaces in the back because it's going to be low traffic. I'm making this up. And I wanted to make the rest of it a courtyard, okay, with a fountain and just, some tables and, I don't know, a neighborhood a neighborhood planting garden. That's not a parking lot, though. I mean, I don't envision building anything on there. I mean, I really just, I just don't. I mean, somebody someday might. So short term, if I said I only need 10 parking spaces, want to make it a courtyard, do I come back to get a variance on that basis based on that restriction?
Mr. Whitehead can answer that, but I believe so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first address the conditions, I do have, I jotted down a few of Ms. Baker's conditions. I have number 5 as reading, the demolition of the theater building negates this variance, period. And then I have a condition number 6 that reads, this site shall not be eligible for any use permitted by special use permit except through the issuance of a special use permit by the appropriate body. As far as the landscaping, which brings us to the current discussion, that is currently condition number 4. We have conditioned this approval with the addition of a Class 3 landscape buffer along the northern line of the rear parking lot. We need to replace the word on with of, but that is in the condition. So specifically to Mr. Townsend's question, if there are modifications to that parking lot, which is zoned residential, that would be otherwise permitted in that zoning district, like a gazebo or a neighborhood park or a garden, that could be done administratively. It's when you add commercial uses like extra parking spaces or a commercial structure, that's when you would have to come back to this body.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. And the landscaping's already in there. Let me ask you a question, and I just don't know, and I apologize. I was trying to go through the code things this morning, and I'm not an expert. On the special uses, Mr. White, the special uses pieces you were just talking about, it sounds like that's for a used car lot, or I mean, I'm assuming that's fine. I just don't know what that includes, but I don't think I have a problem with it. I mean, because that still would have to come back to this body, not necessarily all of you, but this body in the future, correct?
Well, if we add this condition, you would be required to go through the special use permit process through the city council. But in essence, the uses in the CMU3 district that require special use permits are generally the more intense commercial uses, like vehicle repair, car sales, etc. I think the purpose of this condition would just be to articulate that this body is not giving this sliver of the property, nor the balance that's already zoned CMU3, any additional rights other than what's exactly before us, and that's to address the back sliver.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't, I don't see an issue with that. I mean, for the foreseeable future, meaning the rest of my life, and if 50 years from now someone wants to do something, they can go figure out what they want to do, and who knows what then the city might want there. I don't know.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
May I just make one other comment?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to make sure, especially to Scott, I'm not trying to oppose what you want to do. I'm completely on board with what you want to do. I just don't think the procedure is correct. And when you look at the fact that when we make an approval like this, it could be there for 100 years, or it never goes away, basically, and it can't be changed. And and we're approving we don't know what we're approving, basically. And I just think that's not appropriate. I don't think it is. So that's it. And I'm sorry if I've made you unhappy, because I think another process is appropriate for this, not a variance. Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead, can I get a point of clarification real quick to make sure I understand something?
Yes, sir.
This whole property, and it's tougher to say because I can't really point and you see what I'm saying. So both the north rectangle and the south rectangle are already CMU3 except for the points where those rectangles touch. So that last little bit that, like if you look at the lots beside it, that east-west southern boundary and then north of that, so the back of the theater, that just never was done, correct? We're not changing the whole use of the site. We're adding in the little piece that's been there since whenever they finished the last addition on the building. Is that correct?
If you're looking at for instance, the map on page 7 of the staff report, it's like a little square.
Yes, sir.
That represents the back fifth, maybe, of the theater building.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that it's just that little bit in the back that sort of like connects the two larger rectangles together, I guess. Are there any other questions of staff? With that, I assume you want to move into discussion. If I could get a motion to approve BOA 20-51 as conditioned by
John
staff,
Jackson, so
including. Okay, and those would include the additional conditions we also just talked about.
Second.
Yeah. Okay, being moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion at this time? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. Oh, yes, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
I want to thank Ms. Baker for her vision on where she was able to see this going beyond the possible uses that these applicants are looking for. I think that she brought very valuable insight into it, well taken. And Ms. Baker, I just wanted your vision on that and agree with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right. Hearing none, Mr. Whitehead, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Baker?
No.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Let's see. Vice Chair Savage Towns? Madam Vice Chair, can you hear me? Let's go to Ms. Scarlock.
No.
Last call, Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I'm sorry, my car was connected. My answer is no. I find that the standards of 9.22 points of UDC are not being met and will be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
That's 4 ayes, 4 nays.
Okay. Well, the board has spoken. The motion fails. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming down, and hopefully maybe once we have a use, we can come back in and do something for you or do a PD or something like that. But best of luck to you both. We really appreciate your vision for the theater and hope to see something great very soon. Mr. Whitehead, will you please call the next case?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That takes us to the section of the agenda entitled Petition for a Hearing. Agenda item number 11 is docket BOA 2037, located at 2798 New Brunswick Road. The applicant is St. Charles Place, LLC, represented by Charles Boone. The use district is the CMU3 Commercial Mixed Use District, and the request is a petition to rehear the board's rejection of a variance from paragraph 498A4, which would have allowed an accessory use, a parking lot, on a site that contains a principal use, a billboard. And Mr. Chairman, I see Mr. Boone on the line, and Mr. Census, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Boone, and just as a reminder, the body is not required under the rules of procedure to hear any verbal testimony. We have disseminated to the body the petition, the verbiage of the petition, but if you wish to hear verbal testimony, we have Mr. Boone at the ready.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So I'm sure all of y'all have read the petition. It seems to me the crux of his argument is going to be that he is going to make the sign now, instead of a billboard, an on-premise sign, and that would be the argument at the rehearing. Didn't know if y'all had thoughts on that now, or if you want to hear directly from him on that before we choose to vote. So is there any discussion on whether or not we need testimony?
Mr. Chairman, John Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Discussion on the item. I would like to hear why he feels like he's entitled to a rehearing, and if he has new information to present to the board to support his case. So I would encourage my fellow board members to hear out what he has to say now, and then we, I think, could make a determination as to whether we want to hear the case in the next coming BOA session. I believe that would be correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Whitehead, may I ask a question of you real fast?
Yes, sir.
If the sign was converted to an on-premise sign just for this premises, say he combined the parcels, is that allowed, or would there have to be some sort of, a variance for the size of the sign?
Having worked in Germantown before my current position, I will tell you the Memphis sign code is much more generous when it comes to size. However, Mr. Chairman, it's not that generous. This is a 672 square foot sign, so it would still require a size variance.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any thoughts as to Mr. Jackson wishing to hear testimony? How about this? Why don't we... Ms. Savage-Towns.
I was just agreeing with Mr. Jackson, wanted to hear what new testimony he may have to help us make that decision.
Okay. Then why don't we just have a quick voice vote for those in favor of hearing some testimony? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any noes? Hearing no noes, then okay, Mr. Boone, if you could give us some additional information before you do, if you'll go ahead and say your name and address for the record.
I'm Charles Boone, 3501 Chambers Chapel Road in Lakeland, Tennessee.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, so we're not rehearing this right now. We're just seeing what additional information you could, tell us about what you think you could prove at the next hearing.
I've talked to Charles Tarkington, who is the manager of Wolf Chase, this morning. And there's a possibility that Simon would give me property to move the sign on some additional property. But Simon takes forever to make a decision. But he indicated he would try to help me out, and there's a possibility in the future I might be able to get the sign moved. And let me tell you about putting down the gravel. There was a Twin Peaks bar. You probably have heard of them, and they came to me about taking the 3 houses and converting it to a Twin Peaks, and they were talking about using that property underneath the billboard. And so I felt when I put the gravel down, I was going to put asphalt down also. I felt like that it had already been brought to the attention of everybody that I planned to use that property for parking. And let me tell you about what Mr. Tarkington said. He said that they think Wolf Chase may be around for a year. Do you know what's the name of the steak? Logan Steakhouse. They got weeds that are growing 5 feet high. Bed Bath and Beyond is closed. Sears is closed. We're going to lose that mall if we don't be more retail friendly. Now, you used to have the Mall of Memphis gone. 2 of them over near Winchester gone. Raleigh Springs Mall's gone. Are we continue to make unfriendly retail positions? I think not. This is more serious. The whole thing is more serious than just losing Charles Boone. It's going to be losing a whole lot more if we don't get more retail friendly. $60 million a year is in sales tax, I understand, from the mall. Are we going to allow people to move away? This is a bigger thing than speed bumps in the road type of thing. It's a bigger thing. If I open, I'm 85 years old. Everything in the will that I have goes to Reading Bear. It's a program that was designed by the co-founder of Wikipedia. Now, I'm trying to open this up. At 85, I have 3 sister-in-laws and no brothers. I've outlived my oldest brother 16 years. I'm asking you please to help me out. I've got $1 million invested in this thing right now. Lamar, I can't. What are you saying? I can't read it. Lamar Billboard was out here.
Working on multiple plans to submit billboard replacement.
Yeah, Lamar Sign Company has been out here, and I believe I could move this billboard. The billboard's been up 25, 30 years, and we got like I say, an acre and a half that has gravel put down on it, and I was given a notice that I had something like 15 days to get the gravel up and put sod down. And I've talked to Bert Renner. He's allowed me to wait till November the 2nd to put down ball cypress, which I'm going to do. So he's been helpful to me. But really, we're talking about the whole retail sector in this country. The number of people that are going broke are just outstanding. I went over the list this morning, and 4 or 5 of them are in the mall. And they're talking about Macy's, the possibilities of Macy's closing stores. JCPenney, I believe, is gone. Sears is already gone. This is the last 2 malls, and I think the mall over on Poplar Street is probably destined to go too if we don't. And that's $60 million in sales tax. Forget about me. Think about them. And like I say, I've got a year or 2 left to go probably. So I want to spend all this money. I've got $1 million invested in this thing, ready to open. We came up last week, a couple of weeks ago, and y'all indicated that it was a done thing. It was approved by the OPD. They approved it 100%, and Mary Baker decided not to talk against it. But I understand she's a very important person and that type of thing. But we needed 1 vote, and we were told we needed a lawyer. We told the fact that I'm lucky to be speaking to you right now. But, I mean, we needed 1 more vote. It was a done deal. We didn't need a lawyer because it was a done deal approved by the OPD. And she came up with a 4-4 vote and gave it to y'all, of course. But I knew David Goodwin. I don't know whether y'all remember David in your organization, but he was a very practical person. And I hope y'all will be like David. I have a great admiration for the board, I really do. And I have done this. I've built a white fence around the whole place. I cut the grass every 2 weeks. I've got an ideal situation called St. Charles Place out here. and got a great reputation, got 7 motels on the property. Now we have somebody that was with Bellevue Baptist for, 12 years? 12 years. And he put something on Facebook the other day, and he got tremendous response from people that went with Bellevue Baptist. We are going to do great if y'all allow us to do great. We're going to have a place out here that is going to be excellent. And I just ask this. Here I am, 85 years old. I've got different pictures that announce everything good about Memphis. St. Jude, Martin Luther King, Lorraine Hotel, the ballpark, everything that's outstanding. But the fact that we have one of the largest parks in the whole country, one of the largest city parks in the whole country, we're going to extol the values of Memphis as part of our deal. I am really, this is the last of my legacy. I'm 85 years old. Should I be out here opening should I be out here opening a restaurant and a bar when I've been 22 years in AA? No, I don't think so. But I believe in Memphis. This is the last of my legacy. And I appreciate it if you would give me your vote on this one time. Please, okay. I ask it. I guess I've talked too much. I know. Have I talked too much?
Close.
Okay.
Here's what I would say. This is
I would appreciate
it, Mr. Boone.
I've had Memphis Light, Gas, and Water turn off my lights 4 different times. You know, I mean, I have not had much help on this thing, and I really need some help from y'all. And I guarantee you.
I think what you can do is help yourself on this one some. I think you can bring us some, hopefully, I got a couple words of advice, and then we'll see what the board says. Get representation. You said you didn't have it last time. You thought it was a done deal. It doesn't bother me for you to have a chance to get somebody that does this all the time to help. Number 2, think long. You know, our biggest issue with this is the fact you're putting parking on a billboard lot where there's not supposed to be any other use. So figure out something creative on that. Maybe the sign needs to be smaller. That's the kind of stuff we need to hear next time. I know you're going to do
we'll do
stuff with the restaurant, but that's what we're looking for with this. So I would be inclined to vote for a rehearing, but that's the kind of stuff I'm going to want to hear next time.
Yeah,
to get the same results.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
That makes sense. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
You know, I'm sorry, Mr. Hopkins, you've made a case relative to, or pending to some degree, that by us assisting you or granting you the opportunity to come back is or is not going to save Wolf Chase Mall. And let me be frankly speaking for the record, and I think everybody will agree with me, that's not going to be able to happen even if you do get what you need, because the entire retail market and industry of sales is totally changing throughout the world. And one billboard sign and gravel parking under is not going to make a difference for Wolf Chase coming or going. What's going to make the difference there is what they did 5 years ago, or didn't do 5 years ago, to cement their position relative to where they are now. The second thing I want to caution you on, and I'm going to start cautioning people all the time about making statements relative to board members that they spoke against something. Let me make this clear. Ms. Baker did not speak against it. Ms. Baker spoke clearly from her knowledge and professionalism and understanding of the UDC as to what can and cannot happen with regards to restrictions, rules, guidelines relative to our zoning code. That is the issue. And the only problem I got with that is I wasn't smart enough to figure that out myself. So, let me say this. To help you, my vote's going to be yes to rehear this. But I want to echo what the chairman said very clearly. I'm not interested in hearing the tax. I'm interested in hearing what you can tell us or how your think tank you put together can help you solve this problem. I hope I made myself clear, and I hope my other board members will agree with me to hear what you got to say. But we want to hear what you got to say about the project and not about the board members themselves or the actions they take, because the actions they take are clearly based on what the rules and regulations are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Other comments of the board? Hearing none, I would suggest we vote on this, and we'll do that by I guess, Mr. White, if you'll just give us a roll call vote for yes or no to rehear the case.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes. So we have agreed to rehear the case. We'll hear that in 30 days. Please take our ideas seriously and come with representation to hopefully, deal something more with the zoning code next time. And we will see you in a month. Mr. White, is there any other business for today's meeting?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
y'all.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank
y'all
you.
have a great month.
Yeah.
Thank you.